Hey, well, today I'm angry at settled science, and the reason is that settled science does not exist. There is nothing in science that is called settled science. The scientific method means that you have a belief, you have a hypothesis, and experiments either prove or disprove it. And no matter if 1,000 years of experiments has proven something to be true, it just takes one experiment to prove that everybody for those 1,000 years was incorrect. That is the scientific method. The scientific method is that nothing is ever settled science. So when you hear these days people saying the science is settled, there is no such thing as settled science. There are hypotheses, and those hypotheses are either borne out to be true or not, both through time and through experimentation. So let's deal with the first of these hypotheses that's on everybody's mind all the time: climate change. Now, I'll point you to the fact that these proponents of climate change used to call themselves proponents of the global warming hypothesis. When it looked like warming wasn't necessarily going to be the outcome, they changed the name of the group to climate change. This is the Department of Defense to President Bush in 2004. Britain will be like Siberia in 20 years. The world is running out of food. This is in 2024. By 2020, the Pentagon told Bush that Britain would be like Siberia. Here's the second part. This apparently was a secret report that was suppressed, and Britain was supposed to be plunged into Siberian climate. There was going to be droughts, famine, rioting. Now, there has been rioting, but it hasn't been because of climate change. Let's get back to the point. Science is a description of an approach which is evidence-based. It's only evidence-based. There is no such thing as we are taking no further evidence, which is what the case is closed would mean. I mean, if Galileo were alive today, Facebook and Twitter would be telling him that he's not an expert, that the people who are experts, Aristotle, for example, who pointed out that everything orbited the Earth, which we know now to be wrong, but which we thought was correct for 1,000 years, Galileo would not be allowed a voice. Galileo would not conform to conventional thinking. Therefore, according to Facebook and Twitter, his views should not be given any airtime. This is exactly where we are today. People who claim that they espouse science and the scientific perspective, they're happy to sign letters saying there is no science required, no further science required in the area of climate change, vaccinations, etc., etc. Pick your poison. This is one of the hazards. If you are a researcher studying, let's say, climate change, and you believe that there is no climate change, and you seek funding to prove this hypothesis, how much money do you think there is for you? None. There is no money for climate change scientists who don't believe in climate change, and this is the problem. Everybody who's in the field has been co-opted. They are now prostitutes for this grant money. You can't necessarily trust scientists anymore. You know, they say publish or die for scientists, and if you don't get funding, you don't publish. Do you think that you can get funding for publishing unpopular views? These days, I don't think so. I mean, let's look at what just happened recently this year. Just in the last 6 months, we've been told masks are dangerous. Now we're told not only are masks not dangerous, but they are essential. These are considered to be the most credible scientists in the world, scientists at the CDC, among other places, who within 6 months have diametrically changed their views on masks. For example, they've also changed their views on whether the virus can survive in the air, whether the virus can survive on surfaces. They don't seem to have any real scientific basis for any of their official sounding pronouncements. And this is the problem with our modern focus on science. Everybody venerates science. Nobody knows what it is. Science means there is nothing that is taken on faith. Everything is evidence-based. And it doesn't matter how popular or how beautiful or how perfect looking a theory is, one experiment can prove that it is wrong. And if it is wrong, that's it. There's no hanging on to that belief. Science means that you move on. Evidence proves, experiments prove. Climate change, there's no evidence of climate change. There did seem to be an increase in temperature. What do you make of this? This is a little ice age that took place from the early 14th century through the mid 19th century, and the Northern Hemisphere between 1600 and 1800 specifically was suffering from severe and prolonged winters. Did it have anything to do with man's activity? It did not. It had to do with the sun's activity. Our climate is primarily influenced by our sun, which is currently heading towards a global minimum, which means that there's very little activity and temperatures should drop. It's going to be extremely ironic if temperatures drop and we actually enter into a mini ice age and the climate change people are howling that we need to pump more CO2 into the atmosphere to get the temperature up. But they will claim that they were right all along because look, it's getting colder. And isn't that climate change? My God, science means science. These charlatans, these political operatives, let's ignore them. The evidence is the evidence. And until there is evidence of something, whether it be masks being unhealthy or whether it be the climate changing because man is pumping CO2 into the atmosphere, we don't have evidence of either. And yet they've both been official pronouncements. That is not science. Please wake up.